Hi everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we decode the confusing language of corporate filings. And today we're diving into SemiLEDs' latest proxy statement. And let me tell you, it's got some interesting stuff about who's calling the shots and how they're getting paid. So SemiLEDs is getting ready for their 2025 annual meeting of stockholders, which is happening on August 29th in Taiwan. It sounds like a pretty standard meeting, but first we've got to cover the really important stuff in this filing. Every year, companies hold this meeting to vote on who will be on the board of directors. These are the people in charge of guiding the company. SemiLEDs is proposing 5 individuals for these roles, and they're asking everyone to vote yes to keep them on. The company likes to say they're looking for directors with experience relevant to their business and a good mix of skills and backgrounds. They want people with integrity who can make sound judgments and are committed to the company. One of the nominees is Trung T. Down, who's been on the board since 2005 and is also the chairman and CEO. Before SemiLEDs, he held big jobs at companies like Applied Materials and Micron Technology. They think his deep knowledge of the industry and experience on other boards makes him a great pick. Then there's Walter Michael Goff, who's been a director since 2016. He teaches accounting and finance and has worked as a financial consultant for tech companies in both the US and Taiwan. His financial background is seen as a big plus. Dr. Edward Kuan-Shong Heisha has been on the board since 2012 and has a lot of experience in media and telecom companies. He's also an adjunct professor at National Taiwan University. His experience managing companies and teaching business classes is what the board values. Scott R. Simplot has been a director since 2005 and is the chairman of the JR Simplot company. He's involved in a lot of different businesses and has a lot of board experience. He's on the board because his company was a big investor early on. And finally, Dr. Chris Chang Yu joined the board in July of last year, 2024. He's been involved in a lot of tech and biomedical companies and has experience as a CEO and director of public companies. His management of integrated circuit and technology companies is highlighted. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. SemiLEDs is what they call a controlled company because more than half of the voting power is held by Simplot Taiwan Inc. and its affiliates. Because of this, they get to skip some of the usual corporate government rules that most companies have to follow, like having a majority of independent directors or having fully independent directors or having fully independent directors. Or having fully independent directors or having fully independent committees. Looking at the makeup of the board as of July 2, 2025, we see there are 5 directors in total, all of them male. In terms of demographic background, 3 identify as Asian, 1 as white, and 1 did not disclose their background. The audit committee is responsible for making sure financial reports are accurate and that the company follows the rules. They've reviewed the financial statements and discussed them with the auditors. They believe the current members meet all the independence requirements for this important role. The compensation committee deals with how much the top executives and directors get paid. Because SemiLEDs is a controlled company, they don't have to have all independent directors on this vital committee. They review salary bonuses and equity awards for the top brass. This committee is tasked with finding and recommending new directors. Again, due to their controlled company status, they don't need to be all independent directors. They think about skills, experience, and keeping the board well-rounded when picking nominees. Alright, let's look at the money and who they paid to check their books. For the fiscal year ending August 31, 2024, SemiLEDs paid their auditors KCCW Accountancy Corp about $16.10 for the company audit practice, which is why SemiLEDs paid tax fees. It's important to note that KCCW is actually exiting the public company audit practice, which is why SemiLEDs has brought in a new firm, YCM CPA Inc., mentioned later in the filing aid FAR's watch was 94% of the total. They also paid some small amounts for tax fees. It's important to note that KCCW is actually exiting the public company audit practice, which is why SemiLEDs has brought in a new firm, YCM CPA Inc., mentioned later in the filing. Now for the juicy part, the pay of the top executives. For fiscal year 2024, CEO Trung T. Don received $253,024. CEO Trung T. Don received $253,000 in salary and received stock award $3 in salary and received stock award $3 in salary and received stock awards value dollars in click stock awards. The trend here seems to be a base salary for the CEO and the CFO getting a bit of stock on top. Book $43,000 and Mr. Lee earned around $12,400 and $10,000 for the year. Looking back at fiscal year 2023, $43,000 and Mr. Lee earned around $12,400 in $3,000 for the year. Looking back at fiscal year 2023, Mr. Dan also earned $24,000, including stock awards. The trend here seems to be a base salary for the CEO, and the CFO getting a bit of stock on top. It looks like SemiLEDs isn't really giving out stock options anymore, but they did grant restricted stock units or RSUs to their executives. As of August 31, 2024, Christopher Lee had 3,000 restricted stock units that were not yet fully vested. The filing states that the company has not timed the release of important news to benefit executive compensation, which is good practice. For the non-employee directors like Dr. Edward Kwan-Shung Asha and Walter Michael Goff, they each received stock awards valued at about $23,850 for their service in fiscal year 2024. Scott asked Simplot waived any compensation entirely, which is notable. Dr. Chris Chang Yu, who joined in July 2024, received no compensation for the year based on this table. Let's talk about who actually owns the company. Simplot Taiwan Inc., which is part of the broader Simplot company, is the biggest shareholder, owning a significant 57.4% of the company's stock. Trung Tri-Don also has a substantial ownership stake, giving him and Simplot together a combined majority of the voting power. This is why they are considered a controlled company, and this controlling ownership is further solidified by a voting agreement between Simplot Taiwan Inc. and Trung Dondon. This agreement means they'll vote their shares together on company matters, which gives them significant influence. The company has had some loan agreements with Trung Dondon and the Simplot company. These loans have been extended several times and have been partially repaid using company stock. For example, in January of 2024, the company issued stock to repay a large portion of these loans. As of July 25, they again used stock to repay a large portion of these loans. As of July 2, 2025, these loans still totaled a significant $800,000. There were also convertible promissory notes issued to JR Simplot Company and Trung Dondon. These notes that basically acted like loans could be converted into company stock. In January of 2024, the entire principal and accrued interest on these notes were converted into over 1 million shares of common stock. As of July 20th of 2025, there's no outstanding principal on these notes anymore. The voting agreement we mentioned earlier, signed on June 3, 2024, is a big deal. It's between Simplot Taiwan Inc. and Trung Dondon, and it means they've agreed to vote their shares a certain way on company proposals. This voting block represents about 57% of the company's voting power. Now, looking at the financials and the overall situation for SAM's, this proxy statement shows a company with concentrated ownership where Simplot and Trung Dondon hold the reins. The executive compensation seems relatively modest, with the CEO earning a steady salary and the CFO receiving some stock awards. The company has been actively managing its debt by issuing stock, which is a common strategy, though it dilutes ownership for other shareholders. The auditors have changed recently, which usually happens when a firm exits a certain business line. The core business of SemiLEDs is in LED technology, and they are facing a competitive market. Their ability to innovate and maintain market share will be key. The controlled company status does raise questions about independent oversight, but the board does include some independent directors. So what does this all mean for SemiLEDs' future? Well, the company is clearly steered by a strong majority ownership group. This can lead to quick decision making, but also means that minority shareholders might have less influence. The compensation structure doesn't seem excessive, and the use of stock to pay down debt is a pragmatic approach. However, the competition in the LED market is always fierce, and SemiLEDs will need to keep innovating to stay ahead. The change in auditors is a minor point, but worth noting. For any deep dive, it's a company that appears stable but perhaps not experiencing explosive growth based on the compensation structure. Doesn't seem excessive, and the use of stock to pay down debt is a pragmatic approach. However, the competition in the LED market is always fierce, and SemiLEDs will need to keep innovating to stay ahead. The change in auditors is a minor point, but worth noting for any deep dive. It's a company that appears stable but perhaps not experiencing explosive growth based on the compensation trends. What's your take on SemiLEDs' leadership and their financial strategies? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown useful, please hit that like button. And subscribe for more corporate deep dives. Also, make sure to join our Discord community for more discussions and insights. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.